this is all working. I've been switching around the audio quite a lot recently. It should be. It should work. And first of all, hopefully what you will notice is that I have tidied up the panels down below on the Twitch page. They're not necessarily the finished product, but I was having a look today. Hi, Kisasha. And, you know, at various places, that everywhere I looked in terms of how to do the panels, it was just like saying, oh, you can go to this place to get some panels. And I was looking at these panels and just thinking, they're just graphics. I could do graphics myself. I just need to know how to put them in. And I don't know what it was, because whenever I clicked, you know, when I clicked the edit panels thing, the things that was being shown in these YouTube videos with the big plus sign just wasn't there. And then I pissed about, buggered about, clicked random buttons, and then all of a sudden it was there. So I don't know what happened there. Oh, thank you, Gaz8. So, might want to get someone to do better art. Well, I will do some better. So this was just to tidy it up for now. But I don't necessarily know what I would get if I was getting some more art. But yes. And then, of course, I've now done Mythic Argus. So the next challenge is on, which is to see if we can ever kill it again. But, and also, there's going to be a significant build this week. I'm hoping not today. Well, I did actually get a Holy Relic, yes. But the loot is an irrelevant at the moment, because for the past, like, 6 weeks, we haven't been doing any bosses, like, so, you know, I've got coins coming out my arse that I can't spend. And I've got another mission at the moment, so I'm sort of thinking, well, I'll probably have to go in, try and do some mythic boss tomorrow, use a coin on it, and then come back, complete the mission so I don't waste the coin. I mean, I could coin every boss. If, let's say, we cleared every boss next week, which I think the chances of that are close to nil. We need to sort out Death Knights for Agrimar at the very least. Then there you go. Might want to move the YouTube, Twitter to blah, 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 more to the right. I can't, right? It's not that easy to do these things, because it tries to even them out left and right, as far as I can tell. Because I tried to do that, because before I put that stream schedule box in, I was just trying to think, well, all these buttons, most of the small buttons are just little buttons, so I'd like them all together, but it wouldn't have it. It must have one on the left, one on the right. One. It doesn't really care which one's bigger. It evens them out. You know, the Twitch panes or panels, whatever you want to call them, have like OCD. There must be even numbers, equal numbers either side. But there you go. I actually don't know what mine is. I think mine might be Imanar again, but I can't remember which one it was. So I'll just have to wait and see. I mean, you know, in theory, I mean, obviously I'm off at the moment, so I could just do LFR and do whichever one it was. But if I complete the mission, then the coin goes to waste, because I've got 6 coins at the moment. So I'll just wait. I'm sure we'll do some mythic bosses this week. I'll spend a coin and then just ask to go out, get the mission, and get back. But yes, it will be interesting. It's always interesting for any guild that kills Argus that has been extending to see how the re-clear goes. It's not always well. But, yeah, potentially tricky in our situation. Thank you, Frenchie. But I'm still not 11 out of 11 because I haven't killed Agrimar. And, you know, and that's going to be extra challenging as well. The command said, I don't even care about the Broker's Shore at the moment. I haven't really, although technically I did get a couple of coins from it, because I was so annoyed with just storing up all these coins. I just spent some in LFR this week. And so then someone said, oh, it's giving away free coins on the Broken Shore. So I went there. That's why I've got 6 coins again. So, but generally speaking, I don't really do anything in the game now, in the live version of the game. You know, if I'm playing that at all, then it's on the alpha, really. Hi, Mahal. where, yes, so there's supposed to be some changes coming for Rets. I'm doing a live Q&A for Rets this week, but I still haven't completely sorted. I might end up doing it at the normal time, but I'm just waiting on someone else who I'd like to be on it to see if they'd be able to make that time, and then if not, we'll adjust the time to accommodate them. But so there we go. How is everyone else? And I notice MMO Champion have been asking for questions to come in. They say there's a chance they may be able to interview some developers about Battle for Azeroth, so questions going in. I have little doubt, of course, that the questions that will be asked will be the most pointless ones as usual. But you never know. If someone thinks of a good question, that could always end up sneaking in there. And Amazon played a blinder to me today as well. Well, first of all, they still haven't dispatched Warcraft Chronicles 3. So I'm guessing they've basically run out, but just didn't tell me they've run out. I never have any luck with these books at all. They never seem to give it to me. I never seem to order it far enough in advance, higher Fraser. But then they played another blinder. So I ordered some stuff on Amazon. It arrived today. And then I've got an email after it arrived, the recommendations. Oh, we think you'd be interested in this. And I was looking at it and thinking, yeah, I've just bought that. I probably don't need another one. You wonder when Blizzard are going to move Silithus along more. So do I. So do I. I am beginning to fear they may not do anything until the pre-expansion patch now. Because, you know, there's nothing on the PTR. The only question you'd ask is about weekly cash for raids, not only for Mythic Plus. Is that needed, though? I think with raids, you know, achieving raids at a certain level or doing a certain boss is its own reward to more of an extent. I think the reason for the cash, the weekly cash, is to encourage people to do Mythic Pluses and to push keys, to push higher keys. I don't think a simple chest reward is going to encourage people to push harder raid bosses, you know, because they'll either do them or they won't. So I'd strongly, because it's a behavioural thing. These little rewards we get for basically doing nothing are there to encourage us to do certain things. The pros and cons for making max professions account-wide. Now they make nothing powerful anymore. Well, I don't know. Leather workers are making a diving suit. And, of course, scribes are making contracts. There's probably a wider variety of things they're making in the next expansion. But they're certainly not going to make them account-wide. Because, again, then, you know, there's a lot of things that I think they potentially could make account-wide, but they won't, just because they want us to spend more time on alts to make sure that, you know, we spend more time in the game. But professions, I'm not sure that there is any real justification for that. Might help people push a bit, like killing one mythic boss would give you a base mythic item. But you know, I don't know, though, because where you're going to... No. Because the sort of people that would be up for doing it will want to do it anyway, because killing a mythic boss gives you a decent chance of getting a mythic item. I think you might ask if they're going to make any more super hidden stuff, like the orbs. I think almost certainly. They said BFA will be as alt-friendly as Legion. So not at all, really. Now, I don't know, because when they said that, I don't know whether they meant... Because we could look at Legion and say that it became more alt-friendly as the expansion went on. But how much of that was them deciding they'd been too harsh to start with? For example, when they decided to make Archway and Court of Stars, gaining access to it account-wide instead of per character, I think that was a case of them going, yeah, that was a bit too harsh. But some of it, I think, was just naturally happened over the course of the expansion because they didn't need you wasting your time on that content anymore. So exactly where it'll be pitched, I don't know. All they said is that they're going to pitch it at the same as Legion, which to my mind is not very alt-friendly. But it all depends on how many features they'll start off with, because there will be some that we've got now, features that we've got now that they won't have at the start of BFA. We'll have to get them as it goes along. If you had less to do on alts, you'd end up playing them all. Well, so would I, Mahal, but there'll be some people who just wouldn't play them at all, I think. Obviously, we can argue about whether they're really getting people to play more by putting all this stuff in or not. But they obviously think that it's working. The profession patterns that are locked behind rep, for instance, should unlock account-wide. Well, now reps, yes, I'm much more in favour of potentially reps being account-wide. As long as, obviously, you don't want an I don't want it to be a simple case of you have an account rep bar, because then you could have 10 different characters, extreme example, and do some dailies every day, and all of a sudden you're exalted in a day. I'm not talking about that. I think you should have to gain rep on each individual character, so to speak. But like, as soon as the first one gets to a particular rep, then all of your characters can access the rewards for that rep. Maybe that would work. That would then be okay. It's a little bit like the whistle for the one that makes it work on Argus. So that's a rep item that needs revered with the Argusian Reach. I think it is. I think it's that. But if you've got it on one character, you can get it on any character. So that's the sort of thing that might have some. But again, they see making it not too difficult, but slightly time consuming to deal with alts. They see it as keeping us playing the game. Take until the end of this expansion to become alt-friendly. Well, compared to previous expansions, it's still not alt-friendly. By definition, it can't possibly be as alt-friendly as every other expansion, because in every other expansion, all you needed to do on an alt was do whatever content got you gear. That was it. There was nothing else to do. That was all there was to it. And I suppose there was rep as well if you needed anything for rep. But in Legion, you've got all of that, plus you've got artifact power to grind, plus you've got legendaries to get, mythic plus dungeons to do, and of course Argus to kill on at least normal if you want to get yourself one, a trinket, and two, the blessings to be able to upgrade the trinket to 1000 item level. Since I'm only playing part, are you exalted with every faction since Burning Crusade onwards? No. Some of them I don't care about. Apart from anything else, remember I say remember, you might not know. I stopped playing during Wrath at the end of Tier 7 because it was a load of shit. I didn't realise that the rest of Wrath was actually going to be quite good. So obviously I wouldn't have had many reps there. And then I didn't come back until right at the end of Cataclysm, so there's a load of rep there I don't have. But I was never a rep, farmer anyway. If the faction had nothing for me, then I wouldn't bother going out my way to get rep with them. And if it was a gnome rep, I would actively seek to avoid it. In fact, what's really annoying to me is somehow, I don't know how this happened, I'm revered with non-Rigon. And I've actively tried and avoid taking quests off gnomes. Hi, Dude-tastic. Suramar rep for the 5th time. Yeah, so that's why I've not really played my alts in Legion. Because, yeah, as soon as you get there, you know you've got to go through the following things. You've got to do the world quest. You've got to get the... Okay, you can now access world quests account-wide. That's something as well. Is, you know, the fact that we can now get access to world quests as long as one character's got it, is that something that Jay just thought after a couple of months, yeah, okay, let them do that? In other words, is that the sort of thing that's going to carry on into BFA? Or is it the sort of thing that they only want to give us later on? In which case, it may be back to square one in BFA. Oh yeah, the Gnome Mafia were out on that video. It's quite spectacular, some of the comments. I don't rise to their bait. Any urge to have both an Alliance and a Horde main to see all the content in BFA? Well, yes, there is. I have 2 character boosts, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Also, I have a hankering for Zandalari Troll Druid. So it is possible that I could level a character, get the Zandalari rep and the achievements, and then make a Zandalari Troll Druid. However, it's equally possible that when I've, you know, that I will come to my senses and realise that there's going to be a lot to do on my main paladin. Remember, I am in a guild that does not clear stuff quickly. So it's not like I'm going to get content cleared in a couple of months and I've got all the rest of the time to do other things. So, you know, my raid schedule is going to be fairly hefty. Hi, Echoes. Secondly, I'd quite like an alt that I keep reasonably good. As long as it doesn't do my head in, I will actually put some effort into trying to maintain an alt in BFA, which is why I'm playing so many of the specs and classes at the moment, to try and get a feel for which one I would find the least annoying. Then I'd also potentially quite like to have an alt that can tank and one that can heal. Now, of course, one of those could be the Horde one. That would work. Oh yeah, I mean, Legion by and large was a successful expansion. It's just me personally. I'm not saying it's a bad expansion. It's just for me personally, because WoD was a great expansion for me, because all there was to do was level. I liked the leveling. And raid. I liked the raiding. That's all you had to do, and that's all I wanted to do. Whereas in Legion, there's a load of stuff which is good content. I don't really want to do it. What I would like to do is play some other games. I was playing a little bit of Elder Scrolls Online today, but not very much at all. In fact, at the moment, I'm on fumes because I didn't get any sleep at all last night. I completely screwed my body clock. It got to like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, right, well, I know what's going to happen now. I'm going to go to sleep, and then I'm going to get up at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it's buggered. So I thought, well, I can't do that. That's too much. I can't do that. So I just said, right, I'm getting up. I'm going to do some jobs. So I took some stuff to the recycling centre, went to the supermarket, and then, you know, did some tidying up downstairs, whilst trying not to fall asleep. So hopefully, you know, now that I've been awake for, oh dear, hang on, 30 hours, I should get a good night's sleep tonight. But yeah, so for me personally, WoD was better than Legion. But that's for me personally. I recognise that for the majority, it was not. It was a terrible expansion, and Legion is a far better expansion. That's, you know, that's just the way it is sometimes. Farming 12 alts for balance of power, each with Suramar and Stormheim rep at Revered. Yeah, you see, I don't want to do that. I don't really want to. I didn't even want to do the full Suramar stuff on one character, much less more than one. I mean, you know, I have my bucket list of things I would like to do before you know, Legion stops, but there's no guarantee I'll be doing them all. Any chance I can get a guide out for the other bosses? Not quickly, because we're not killing the other bosses. So I don't know. There is a possibility if we actually start killing the other bosses. But, you know, that is, you know, we've got to recruit some people for that. I mean, there may be far fewer people stopping raiding than I first thought, so it might not be that bad, but we'll just have to see. Something's not quite right. What is not quite right? If Alliance and Horde have a tier with different raid mechanics, I really doubt they will. It's a, you know, you can't rule out the possibility because I've ruled out far too many things. You know, I think there's about 3 or 4 times in Legion where I've gone, nah, Blizzard won't do that, and then they did. So I'm not even saying that anymore. But how many people realistically are going to complete 2 raid tiers on Mythic? Especially when the majority of the bosses will be exactly the same. You know, all Blizzard said at BlizzCon is there may be some faction-specific bosses. Now, I think there probably will be. But, you know, that is not letting us think that every boss is going to be different. And also, I still think they'll be mechanically the same. They'll just be cosmetically different. I mean, I'm sure some people will still complain then. There'll be some people think, oh, that mechanic's easier to see on, you know, Mr. Alliance guy compared to Mrs. Horde guy. Or girl or whatever. But we'll just have to see. You kind of wish cross-realm Mythic was around much sooner. Ah, well, I don't think it is. I don't think it's a new feature. Or yeah, we can now do cross-realm Mythic and Taurus. And Taurus is the current tier, sure. But I don't think it's been put in as a feature. I think it's just because the tier is... Like Blizzard always say, a tier lasts 4 to 5 months. I just think that they've brought it out at the time where they considered the tier to be basically over. Obviously it's not, because we can still get the cutting edge, which is why, you know, I mean, if there was another tier to come, I wouldn't be able to get the cutting edge on this for the 2nd tier in a row because we took too long over it. So I don't think that that's a feature they've introduced. It would be nice if it was. I think it would be nice if it was anyway. There are downsides to it. But because you say it helps recruitment. In theory it does, because you've got, you know, I'll give you an example. When I was trying to recruit a Shadow Priest in Nighthold, and he wouldn't join us. Was it Nighthold? It might have been Tomb of Sargeras, I can't remember. But in my last guild. And he said that the reason he didn't want to join us is because he didn't want to transfer and then it not work out. To which I remember thinking, well, why have you put down on WoW Progress you're happy to realm transfer then? Anyway, doesn't matter about that. But still, and it was absolute madness anyway, because I looked at his logs, I thought, unless his attitude is lacking, unless he's a complete cock, then he'd be all right, because his logs were more than fine. But anyway, that was his concern. Now, in a situation where we could have just raided cross-realm, he could have joined the Discord, you know, and that would have been okay. But the downside to it, just as it's easier for you to try people out like that, you know, it's also easier to lose them, because while they're raiding with you, they're getting more experience potentially if they've stepped up. If you've got higher progress than they had, they might even sneak the odd bit of gear, and then who knows, they might just be biding their time to find an even better guild, and you end up losing them. So, whereas if they have to transfer, then they've spent money on it, they're more inclined to stay. So, you know, it's one of the things I wanted to talk about in a video today, actually, but I didn't, you know, I was waiting so long for this thing to arrive from Amazon. I didn't want to get in the middle of it and then have the door go. But it only arrived, like, literally just before I was doing this. How many raiders are we losing? I don't know. Like, there's one post I suggested people should really post, you know, because it's already causing us massive. They know that we've got a roster of 22, so anyone leaving is basically causing massive problems. But at least say who you are, so that we can try with 2 days. I mean, 1 day to go now, and recruit some other people. But I don't know. So we think maybe 1 or 2, but it could be more. We've had a content drought. I don't think I would call this a content drought. A content drought is when it goes on for too long. Because you think about it, where we are at the moment, we're in April. You know, there's still a lot of guilds that will get Antorus finished. A lot of the... Actually, no, it's not that. It's a sore spot this now, isn't it? I was going to say a lot of the players that have got cutting edge could distract themselves with alpha. But actually, this time round, there's only so many got in the alpha. And then it'll be summer. Well, a lot of people tend to go off the boil over summer anyway. And then after summer, the next expansion will be coming out. So really, we've only really got to get to like another couple of months before people will start to wind or want to wind down for summer anyway. Do I like the way they've established unlocking flying in expansions? Would there be a different way to do it? I'm happy with the compromise because I'm one of those people that wouldn't have minded if they had abolished flying. I just knew that it was a crazy thing to try and do because it's in the game. Once you put something in the game, especially something that's wildly popular, you can't just take it away. So it was obvious that there would be hell to pay with what they said. But personally, I'd have been up for that. I wish flying had remained as a TBC thing, or even just not brought in the game at all. You think it'll be like Trial of the Grand Crusader? See, that's another one I missed. I mean, I was boosted through it when I came back to the game as a casual, but I really don't know much about it. I mean, the fear is, of course, I mean, if you think about the Trial of the Grand Crusader where you did it against the faction champions, they could easily bring another encounter like that with their so-called smart AI. So it works like on the islands. I can definitely see a raid boss based on that. Well, a raid encounter, I should say. I can absolutely see a raid encounter based on, you know, the Grand Crusader faction champions, definitely. I mean, they've already, you know, the thing that gives it verisimilitude is the fact that we've already data mined separate achievements for Alliance and Horde, like the top 100 Alliance, top 100 Horde. However, I think the reason for that is to try and encourage a rebalancing of the Horde and Alliance in raiding. But it would work better if there were more of them. You feel it's harder to retain players that don't wish to transfer to play with us? Yes, it would be. And I mean, the other thing I was going to talk about in this video, because we're, at the moment, musing about whether it's better to go to another server. Like now, at this particular moment in time, obviously guilds will be starting to think about their strategy for BFA. And an inevitable question that always comes up, unless you happen to be on a large population realm, is, should we realm transfer? Now, there are pros and cons. People just think it's a definite win if you move to a large realm. They think that the only barrier to it is the cost if everyone can't afford or doesn't want to pay for the transfer. But there are downsides to being on a big population realm. You can't handle not having flying. Yeah, but the terrain's the interesting thing. That's their argument. I mean, you could tell Argus was a big screw you, wasn't it? It was like they were chuntering after WoD that they had to bring flying back in. So then they went, I know, I tell you what we'll do. We'll bring it in halfway through the expansion. And then a month later, we'll bring out 3 new zones where you can't fly in them. You remember so many raiders being angry that it was a PvP fight. I don't know. I see. I wasn't there at the time, so I didn't progress on anything like that. I can understand people being upset that it was just a shit fight. But you know. Any solution saving the population from minor servers going to the mega one-sided servers? Lower the cap people logged in. Well, that... I mean, really, they want to abandon the concept of realms altogether. Well, ideally, abandon the concept of them. Like, I'm not saying don't have realms. Have realms for economy purposes, perhaps. But for raiding and guild purposes, I would say don't have them. So have it so that you can have multiple people, people from multiple different realms, rather, can still join a guild. In other words, guilds can be realm wide, and have it so that you can do whatever raiding, including the current mythic tier. Maybe just keep, because what I don't like in Elder Scrolls Online. Elder Scrolls Online has the mega server idea, but what I really hate about it, and I absolutely detest this, is their auction house system, and that's very likely a consequence of the mega server thing. So, as I say, maybe have realms for economy purposes. So auction houses are just for the realm. But for most other respects, certainly for guilding and raiding, then it's, across the whole region. I know, but auction house is in clusters, though. Like, it's still not across all realms, is it? But the thing is, I mean, the more there's also probably the PR side of it. If you have to merge servers, then it's almost like admitting you're losing players, which is not necessarily true. It's just that players tend to migrate to the larger servers because they think it's better. And in some ways it is. And probably actually when you weigh up the pros and cons, it probably is overall a slight win. It's just that there are disadvantages I don't think people really consider. You wish you could play with EU NA cross-realm now. No, because wherever the servers are physically located, the other region would have a load of likely. So you can see it on like the PTR or the Alpha because they're located on North American servers. So if you're in Europe, you get lag. It's not necessarily horrendous, but it's noticeable. And especially noticeable once you start raid. Well, if you're in a guild that does raid testing. I mean, there's actually very few of our guild have got alpha invites. So I don't think we're going to be doing... And I also got the impression we're probably not the sort of ones that would get those anyway. I haven't actually done any raid testing in alpha or beta, more likely, since like WoD. If you merge realms, you negate the need for area economies. Yeah, but the problem is there's people attending where they move, they're choosing the high population servers. Like, okay, they're not just moving away from low pop servers. They're specifically moving to high pop servers. So the last realm I was on was the Maelstrom EU. That was a fair-sized realm. It wasn't one of the big boys, but it was probably the largest realm where you don't have queues. And I still had people, when I was trying to recruit them, tell me that they wouldn't move because it's too low population. And it is not a low population realm. It's just not a mega high population realm, that's all. So merging realms isn't going to stop that. People are still going to see... They see the advantages in being on a more populated realm and then just extrapolate from there and go, well, the bigger the realm, the better. No, it doesn't stop OC realms, and as you say, Slootbag does play EU as well. There are people that play across other realms. It can be done. It's just that it is noticeable. That's all. It is unpleasant. Getting the achievement for Trial of the Grand Crusader without any deaths with only 50 attempts was hard. See, I missed all that. I wasn't playing the game at the time. All that limited attempt stuff, completely missed. The only limited attempts boss I've ever done was Ra-Den. Worst thing about big servers is visibilities for guilds. On Exodar, we would be king on the server, but on Storm Rage, not even in the top 50. Well, there is that as well. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. So, yeah, but there's plenty of OC players play in North American guilds, though, and vice versa. Because the big disadvantage with being on a big realm is you go there on your guild, okay? Now, the advantage is that when you need to recruit, you've got a larger pool of players who could join your guild without having to pay a transfer fee. That sounds like a good thing. But it is also true that other guilds can nick your players without them having to pay a transfer fee. So it's also easier if you let your foot slip off the gas pedal to lose players as well. Now, actually, being off the front page of WoW Progress might seem a bit crap. You know, if you're like server 20 or worse or something like that, that might seem a bit bad. But at the same time, you're far enough down that other recruitment officers won't go looking at your guild to nick players from. Whereas if what you're worried about is exposure for people applying to your guild, then that's the wrong way to do recruitment. Recruitment has to be active. You've got to go out and find players. And those players will pay attention to several things. They'll pay attention to your world rank, except in North America, where they seem to have more of a focus on North American rank, which is fine. They'll pay attention to your progress compared to theirs. They'll pay attention to how many nights you raid and what those hours are, and the fact that they don't have to pay a transfer fee. That's it. They're not really paying that much attention to server rank unless you're in the top few and potential. Because, like, you know, who gives a crap whether they finish server 6th or server 7th, really? No one. You know, you either finish server 1st or it makes no difference. So down in like server 20 position is quite a nice place to be on balance. Because if you happen to be on the same server as like Method or someone, well, that's fine. You're not going to get world. You're not going to get server first. End of story. Relax. Should there be some sort of penalty for guild hopping, and would that help? Like a cooldown? There's no. Blizzard shouldn't do anything like that. It's up to individual guilds to retain their players by being well enough organised that they can keep them. Blizzard shouldn't do it. Blizzard, you shouldn't view players leaving a guild as a bad thing. If players are leaving a guild to join another guild, it's because that guild fucked up. You know. Or the player leaving lied to the next guild, you know, whatever it is. But, you know, Blizzard shouldn't get involved in that sort of stuff now. You know, you'll just have to accept if you're not one of the very top guilds on the server and you're not making rapid progress, you just have to accept you're going to be a stepping stone guild. People are going to come in when you find a really good player. You know, some really good players stay there because they like the atmosphere. But if they're very progress-minded and that's their main focus, you know you're going to lose them. That's fine. Get what you can out of them and just make sure that you're aware that at any time they could disappear. Make sure you've got a plan to replace them. Hiya, Clefado. You wish they would spend some time focusing on world PvP meaning something. Yeah, but they're not going to. Take a town. No, I don't want them messing about with PvE. I don't want the days, well, the days they're still here, of some arsehole coming and killing my quest NPCs or Flight Master. They should make their own continent for PvP. The island of the PvP. And they should just go there and do stuff there. You're on a medium to large server, but there's not a lot of mythic guilds. Less competition for guilds means fewer good players. It depends. If the population is high enough, then there are some there. Not as many on as a large guild, but again, it's the two-way street. There's not as large a pool of players to recruit, but equally, there's not as many guilds trying to nick your players either. I mean, I would say on balance, it's probably better to be on a larger realm if you don't mind the queues, or you can put up with them. Because the queues are the thing that fill me with dread. But you do have to be aware. Like, if you have a guild that's used to being on a fairly low pop realm, or even a medium pop realm, and they go to a high pop realm, you know, I just think it could be the sort of thing that catches them off guard, the number of players they lose to other guilds on the same realm. Something they should be prepared for. Can you say us what my thoughts are towards the next phase on the PTR stroke live? There isn't one. There's nothing on the PTR. Not a sausage. Which just gets me thinking that it's going to be, because there will have to be a PTR. They have PTRs for the pre-expansion patch. So the fact that there isn't anything on the PTR at the moment makes me think that we are actually not going to get anything until the pre-expansion patch. One of your guilds is planning on doing that. We've already snagged a couple. I doubt they'll be able to continue like they've done on the lower population server. Well, yeah. I mean, that's just it. You just have to be a bit aware. You can, you know, some people, I think, well, it's the same as anything in life. They'll just see the advantages in doing what they're doing. And it might well be that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. But I think you ought to be mindful of the disadvantages so that you can at least plan. No, I think abandon all hope now of a mini-raid. They were just toying with us when they refused to say no, when they were asked the direct question. You know, quite a while ago now, I suppose it was. What was it, about 8 months ago? We were just thinking about a new PvP zone as well. Part of the problem the game has is the lack of involvement from all the players. But that's what it should be. They should actually just have a larger zone that is just for PvP, with proper PvP objectives, so that you can actually encourage large-scale battle and leave them to it. Piss off out of my PvE areas. Because that's another thing. I mean, there's, you know, our guildmaster was going through the checklist in terms of reasons why we may move. Now, I say we may move. It's just something being considered because, as he quite rightly says, if you're trying to think about recruiting people into the guild we're in at the moment. So first point, we're alliance. Second point, we are not even in the top 500. That's a bit of a body blow for getting decent players. Third point, we're on an RP realm. Now, I would say at the moment that's a bit of a disadvantage. I, for example, discounted it out of hand until someone said, no, it's all right. You don't have to actually RP on that realm. But as he noted, in BFA there's only going to be 2 types of realm. There's going to be normal realms and RP realms, and there's going to be a smaller number of RP realms. So that means a smaller cluster of realms from which to recruit effectively. So that's not going to be good, because the whole concept of PvE and PvP goes out the window, because that's now going to be a personal choice as opposed to a realm choice. And by the time you go through all this list, it's like, well, It's not great. I mean, we haven't recruited anyone. Like, it's taken us, apparently, I haven't actually checked myself because I was too, distressed about it. I think it's taken us something like 5 weeks to kill Argus. It's too long. But in all that time, we haven't recruited anyone. And we've needed recruits. We've needed a resto. We need a resto shaman. We need a death knight. We need some more range. We could do with a warlock at least. And a shadow priest. So there's 4 things on the shopping list immediately. To say nothing of replacing whoever's going to stop raiding now. They may have had something planned but scrapped it or delayed it for BFA. It's possible. I just think that Legions seem to be so well planned that although I don't discount the fact that they may have abandoned something, I do get, I'd be surprised if they had to abandon such a major piece of content as even a smallish raid. The cluster would be the same for recruitment. It's not like you can't transfer or cross-realm content. No. RP realms are different. They don't have sharding, for example. So, yeah, it's different. You liked it when you played on an RP PvP server. I mean, I don't notice it, to be fair. It's just like a PvP realm. But, I don't understand. I still don't, to this day, understand how a raiding guild that doesn't RP would have ended up on an RP realm. It's baffling to me, but obviously it's the sort of thing that happens. But then I never used to understand why all the best raiding guilds are on PvP servers as well. Didn't understand that either. So, yeah, just not in specific areas like the places where people hang out. I think on the EU, the main alliance realms, I think there's only really 2. There's Ravencrest for what is now a PvP realm, and the Silver Moon for PvE realms. But I think Silver Moon's dropped quite a long way back. If I have a look, I think it's a while since they've had decent guilds there, or a decent number of them at any rate. Well, it's not the same, though, because you get people, and it might be a false perception going, I don't want to be on... Because I thought that. I thought to myself, I don't want to go on an RP realm. And there'll be plenty of other people who think the same thing. How do I find the bloody realms? Oh, here we go. Silver Moon. So there isn't any guilds on Silver Moon inside the top 100. It's a bit grim. So for what is a large, and it's a big old realm, doesn't really have any great guilds on it. There's someone in World 109. Then it's 270, 358, 39. They're all pretty spread out until you get to around about 6th. Whereas you used to have some good ones on Silver Moon. It's not that it affects raiding, it affects your pool of raiders. I see, Web. You have a smaller pool of raiders. There are plenty of raiders who will not even consider an RP realm. Because the other thing is, I mean, coming back as a... Because I mean, a part of it, as I say, may well be perceptions that are not true. But it doesn't matter. Those perceptions exist. All right? It's a bit like the reason why so many people started going... You can understand why people are more likely to favour Horde now for raiding. But, you know, when when it started off getting imbalanced, again, it was largely based on wrong perceptions, but those perceptions were still there and it still had an effect. But there is potentially some real thing as well. Like when you're merging realms, you talk about merging realms, connecting realms. Well, you can't connect an RP realm with a normal realm easily. Would be cool if they made a server where each zone was contested. I don't want any PvP crap in my areas. PvP players can piss off to a little island and then PvP to the heart's content there. What if Blizzard merged most servers into one of two servers per type, but use the sharding of tech for... Well, that's what I was saying. If they just had realms for the purposes of the auction house, or clusters of realms, whatever, then that's fine. The economy then is okay, and then everything else can just be as if it's one big server. But they want a big old area. I mean, I keep pointing to Elder Scrolls Online as the model. If you want world PvP, then that's surely the model that you actually want. But that would require... I don't actually... No, I'm not even sure it would require that much development. But for whatever reason, they won't do that. I mean, it's a PvE game. It's PvP is an afterthought and always has been. If you recruit cross-realm, it's the same pool. You make it sound like it's a different game license. But for some people, it is. Oh, Wintergrass. Yeah, Wintergrass was piss poor attempt. It was tiny. Minuscule. And also, there was one objective in it. You'd no good having one objective. Then everyone just meets up for a big old scrap. It's like Alterac Valley. You need loads of objectives. You need a situation where you charge a fortification, the faction that owns that fortification rushes to defend it, but then another group, because the other thing is it kept the size the same as well. You don't want to keep the size the same. If you've got more players for one faction in there, then they're going to win. That's all there is to it. You know, you can have another group go and attack a different fortification that belongs to the ones that's attacking that one, and then you've got to decide what do you do. You know, it becomes much more interesting then. The different possibilities. Like I say, I've said this before, I'll say it again. You can have large large guild groups that decide to either attack or defend fortifications. You can have smaller groups, maybe pugs, that just go around ambushing people or providing intelligence, you know, explaining where enemy forces are moving to, things like that. You know, individuals, little small groups that could do some of that as well, hiding behind terrain, just keeping an eye on things, getting involved in little like solo ambush type situations, picking off stragglers. So much interesting stuff to be going on with, unlike what we have now, which is a load of rubbish, just brain dead nonsense. And I really don't see that it would take a lot to do that. And once you've got it, you don't have to do that much to keep it up either. Because the same zone can be used from expansion to expansion, as long as it's large enough. I'm not saying you wouldn't refresh it every now and then with other bits of content in that zone. But you don't need to like fundamentally redesign it every expansion. You do it once and it's done. They should have done that instead of revamping all the 1 to 60 content in Cataclysm, which no bugger used anyway. Because at the same time as they redesigned every single zone from 1 to 60, they also put a button in there that made people go, oh, the way to level is to stay in Orgrimmar and Stormwind and press this button. I don't like PvP in this game. Like I used to think, excuse me, I used to think I didn't like PvP in MMOs at all. Like I'd played PvP in like on smaller scales in things like, you know, Doom and Star Wars, some Star Wars game that I forget the name of now. And then, you know, World of Warcraft, which was my first MMO, PvP, and that I thought was god awful. I thought, oh, so PvP doesn't work on a large scale like in MMO. Well, I was wrong. It just doesn't work in WoW. Worked fine in Warhammer Online, and worked fine in Elder Scrolls Online. What's been my favourite dungeon in the alpha? There's not been that many in there, so it's difficult to say. I haven't actually been that impressed with them. Like Freehold's all right, but you know it's just got that pirate theme thing going on. It's okay, but it's not special. The Motherlode, I'm not really keen on. I'm not really looking forward to doing the Motherlode as a Mythic Plus dungeon. And what's the other? There's another couple. Then there's like the Troll. I don't like any of them at the moment. So hopefully some of the ones we've still got. There's still plenty that we haven't seen yet. Hopefully some of them will be better. Because what I've seen so far, I've not been impressed with. Cosmetically or otherwise. But maybe they've brought out the crapper dungeons first, I don't know. The ones that they designed on the back of a fag packet over lunch. So therefore they got done first. Ashran. Ashran's too small as well. There's no... Because I thought that, as soon as I got into the WOD beta, I thought, oh, Ashran, this looks interesting. This might be the sort of thing. Too small. And again, there's not really anything of interest to do. Because they're too controlling, Blizzard. It's like they must control your behaviour with these little silly quests. They don't need to. For PvP especially. PvP in WoW is by far your favourite of any MMO. What has WoW got for PvP that every other MMO doesn't have? That's what I don't get. Every other MMO has battlegrounds and arenas. You know, it's just that that's their side content for people who are a bit bored. I don't understand what you think WoW has. Because all the other MMOs have those things as well. Tab top. Oh my god. So what you're saying is you like the combat system better. That's not liking PvP better, is it? That's just the combat system. It's got nothing to do with PvP. Grand scale PvP is no good. You get lost in the mess. You don't, though. Because it encourages you to join larger groups. Preferably as part of a guild. More organised. And when you say you prefer more strategy and coordination, that has strategy and coordination. There is almost no strategy or coordination in what we have at the moment. Because Blizzard leads you through hoops. All you do, whether it's a battleground or arena, is you jump through the hoops. There is a way to do them. But by their definition, there's no controlling a proper large-scale world PvP scenario because you don't know how people are going to behave. A Warfront's going to have a PvP mode. I don't think so. No. I can't remember whether they specifically said no or just didn't say yes. They did. They did say that islands would have a PvP mode. So I don't know whether they were saying no to warfronts just by omission or whether they specifically said no. I'm not sure that it would be that popular though. I don't know. ESO was just a Zerg. How can it be a Zerg when there's no one place to congregate? And there isn't an objective either. You can't win it. You can't get to a point where, oh, we've won, there we go, leave and carry on what we were doing. Am I excited for Warfronts? No. The concept of it, again, does look interesting. But I'm not excited for it because it sounds to me like another piece of content I'm going to have to do. Probably is going to need to be done with the guild, but it's limited size. So there's going to be some people who will be able to do it with the guild. And then everyone else, which will be a relatively small number of people, will either have to do it with alts, which means you won't be able to do it on your own alts, or you'll just have to pug it. And it also puts pressure again on guilds in terms of the number of knights they can raid. Because if you think now, in BFA, as well as doing Mythic Plus, we're likely to have to do so many islands a week. And a Warfront as well. You know, a Warfront a week, potentially. It's just all adding to the time. You know, raiding is going to be 2 or 3 nights a week max to fit all this in. So yeah, so I'm massively concerned about, you know, how much extra stuff to do, and if people try and insist on maintaining a raid schedule that means that you end up, because we had a problem in the last guild I was in that some people were keeping up with their artifact weapon and some people were not. So that meant you ended up with those same people were just weaker. They were just straight up weaker. So imagine having 3 times as much content to do in a week that's nothing to do with raiding, but you still have to do it for the raiding. So that's what I'm not looking forward to. It's not that the content I think will be bad. It's just the fact that we'll be forced to do it. You enjoyed the Kirin Tor World Quest flying. I liked the Kirin Tor quests, but not the jumpy on the platforms ones. They were annoying. I quite like I like the Enigma one, even though that's just basically a counting exercise. I like the barrels one. You know, I like most of them, but I do not like the jumping on the platforms one. Hopefully Warfronts award cool armor transmogs. I strongly suspect they will award gear of tangible value. Wouldn't surprise me if Azerite armor was dangling from it. What you don't like about MMOs is the waiting for a group to form. Well, ordinarily I would say that, I mean, that's the benefit of having a guild. You know, ideally have a guild that has a set time to form. Doesn't seem to work in my guild though, because we still always end up going late, but yes. I don't see them. The problem is I think Blizzard got it into their head after WoD that you can't just bring out content just for fun. Because from their point of view, they thought that there was plenty of content in WoD. They sort of knew that there wasn't. But, you know, they thought that challenge modes was content and, you know, the mythic dungeons was content and all the rest of it. But because you didn't need them for anything. So I think that's why artifact power came in. Something that you have to do. Like week after week. What if we are not able to switch the affixes on our Azerite armor? Which you won't be able to as far as I know. And you have to farm multiple pieces of the same piece. Well, that's possible. I think they're supposed to be permanent. I only say think. Obviously, they're not in the alpha yet, so we can't say. Is a profession squish coming? Sort of, yes. When will the level squish come for players? They don't seem to even be entertaining the idea of a level squish. As in, they're not even considering it as far as I can tell. They just seem to, whenever it's not raised that often, and when it is, they seem to dismiss it out of hand. The AP requirement hurt your guild a lot. Well, it will do, because before Legion, any guild, even though guilds will say things like, you know, we don't want raid loggers, we want people to be online between raids as well, social atmosphere, all that stuff. The fact of the matter is that every guild, or most guilds, had raid loggers who were perfectly good. They used to do enough stuff outside of raids so that they turned up with their consumables and everything. You know, so they'd be perfectly fine as raiders, just not necessarily very sociable. But Legion basically killed them off because either you told them to do one because their artifact weapon wasn't good enough, and either they found another guild that would just let them get away with it, or they quit the game. Because yes, some people just do not have the time. Some people don't have the inclination. It really doesn't matter whether you've not got the time or inclination. You shouldn't have to do that content. I'm sort of okay with the concept of doing 1 plus 15, the equivalent of 1 plus 15. That's better. But I just worry what it's going to be like for islands and warfronts as well. Crucible things. I don't think there's going to be anything. Well, I hope there's nothing going to be like the Crucible. It is like the Crucible in that I think it's when you select it, it's permanent. There's not a reset option on it. And you will be able to farm multiple of the same piece in theory because they don't Titan Forge. Azerite armor is a combination of the new tier and the new legendaries and the new artifact weapon. And you will inevitably need multiple sets of them. Of course, because they'll have different bonuses. As for needing 100 levels to get to max, there aren't enough spells or abilities for that. Well, no, there are not. There are... I mean, this is my thing. You know, it's very noticeable on the alpha. You know, coming from a role-playing background where every time you get a level, you get something. Your character gets something special. You get nothing. The last time we got anything for leveling was in WoD, and that was every 2 levels. Every 2 levels, we got a buff to one of our abilities. But now we get nothing at all. And I agree that, obviously, like Blizzard said, they can't just keep giving us abilities. But then why keep giving us levels? I mean, that being said, it looks like there's going to be Azerite armor as quest rewards as we level up. So but that's not attached to the levels themselves, that's just quests. Oh, yeah. You don't know how people don't get bored of running Mythic Pluses. I think Mythic Plus is fine. I can, you know... It's the fact that you're forced to do it that gets me. I would enjoy it more if I did. Well, at the moment, I don't feel compelled to do it. If someone asks to do one and I've got time, I'll do one. I never sort of say no if I'm actually free to do it. And that's much the best way, just to be able to do it you know, if people are about and want to do one, and if you, but not feel forced to do it. It wasn't pleasant. There was a period of time when I used to have to spend my Friday evenings, and usually a fair amount of Saturday as well, doing them. And I was by no means doing as many as some of the more hardcore players in the guild. And that is just not pleasant. It's not nice. In the last Azeroth review, he said he didn't like Einstein. Well, there's three aspects to Einstein. One, as a scientist, it was very bad. He obviously, you know, came up with something very clever, but he screwed over lots of other people's discoveries and delayed, you know, scientific discovery for years. Secondly, as a human being, he was appalling. His treatment of women, especially his wife, was absolutely disgusting. However, when it came to human nature, he was quite wise. There's a lot of very wise phrases he came out with, which I repeat quite a lot. But yes, he was a very poor scientist, quite frankly, and a disgusted human being. See, I don't really know anything about Carl Sagan other than his name. I know he's famous, but he's more famous in America for his TV show. Or the one he did have, anyway. Mythic Plus is all some guild have. We don't have time or members to raid. But yeah, I mean, Mythic Plus is a very good piece of content. It would just work better as an alternative progression path, as opposed to having to do both. You don't see the point in having multiple sets of Azerite armor. The reason is because they are not. Don't think of them as being like the new tier. They're more like the new legendaries. They have lots of different things on them, and different combinations of those different things will work better for some fights than for others. You will want multiple sets of them. Oh yeah, I can, excuse me, I can absolutely tell that where I'm going to have to farm my best stuff from is bound to be the dungeons that no one else wants to do. Probably the Motherlode. Mythic Plus gear not working, Raising Raiding gear not working, Mythic Plus. No, I don't think they should do that. Artificial restrictions like that I don't think make sense in a role-playing game. They shouldn't have to do that. They should just, like, my attitude is this. Don't have artifact power or Azerite, as it's going to be in BFA, drop in Mythic Plus. Have Mythic Plus drop gear as it does now. I've no objection to, you know, getting some Azerite as a consequence of like we have now, basically. If they did it like they do now, it's okay. Where if you just do one Mythic Plus of a certain level to get the max Azerite the following week, and a piece of loot even, that's okay. But don't have the dungeons themselves drop Azerite. Just have them drop gear. Same with raids. Don't have raids drop Azerite. Just have them drop gear. And if people want to coin and maybe get Azerite if they don't get an item, then fine. That way people don't feel the need to do content that they're not actually... All Blizzard need players to do is to want to do content every week so that they don't think about unsubscribing. That's all Blizzard requires of us. So there's no need to force content down our throats. All we need is one thing that we want to do each week. Your toon shouldn't be stronger changing a sword. Yeah, but the sword's magic. Yes, they did say that Azerite armor doesn't Titan Forge. So you... but not Titan Forging is not the same thing as not being available at different item levels, is it? Like, I mean, I don't know how it works exactly, But let's say an Azerite piece drops in dungeons. This is pure speculation, of course, because they haven't given us cast iron details and it's not available for testing. But let's say it drops in a dungeon. Let's say freehold. You would still think that the item level of that Azerite armor that drops in a mythic plus 0 is not going to be as high as drops in a mythic plus 10. Because that's got nothing to do with Titan forging. That's just the item level of the gear that drops in that dungeon. And therein, even if they did stop Azerite dropping in Mythic Plus dungeons, might create a reason to still want to do lots of Mythic Plus dungeons. Because if one of those dungeons has my Bis Azerite, I'm going to have to keep running it and trying to run it at a high level, which means trying to find people who've got the key for that high level. That means pugs. I've got a lot of apprehension about this. A lot of apprehension. You wonder if only the primary and secondary stats change, or do the traits get stronger between a normal... Well, at the moment, you would think there's no secondary stats on Azerite armor, because it's notable in the alpha that the Azerite armor pieces, helm, shoulders, and chest, there's not many. You don't get many of those items from like Quest Rewards. There are some, but all of them are primary stat only. They don't have secondary stats on them, and it's pretty clear that they are, when it's all implemented in properly, they are going to be Azerite armor pieces. So I'm looking at it and thinking, I don't think Azerite armor pieces have secondary stats on them. I think they're just primary stats. So it would appear. But in terms of the traits getting stronger, I think it's going to be like legendaries. The traits will be the same. It's just the stats on them that will change with item level, which is still worth getting, of course. Wouldn't it be a good idea for warfronts to drop different stuff than Mythic Plus, Islands and Raids? In terms of making the content useful, yes. However, that would also have the effect of forcing me to do it, which I am not happy about. You know, from my point of view, because I want to raid, and raiding is like the pinnacle, it's their premier content, I should be able to get the best Azerite armor from raids, and I should be able to get all the Azerite I need from raids as well, even though I just said it shouldn't drop from raids, which you probably shouldn't. But that's what I would like to do. And then if I choose to do warfronts or islands or Mythic Plus, which I will from time to time if the content is good, then, you know, that should be up to me. But that's not how it's going to be, because we know from Legion that that's not how it's going to be. You wouldn't be surprised if there'll be a Crucible option for Azerite armor too. No, there's not. The Azerite armor is going to have set things on it, and you choose. So it's only like the Crucible in that you choose which ones you want, and then it's fixed. But at the same time, it's not random. Thoughts on the Cape controversy? What Cape controversy? I haven't heard of a Cape controversy. What have I missed? Has there been any information on the estimated time to complete a warfront? No, but given that it's once a reset, you would think surely it's going to be at least an hour. It's going to be a significant amount of time. Oh, the armor stuff. Okay. I don't really have any thoughts on it. Like, at the moment, we don't have access to these in the alpha, so we don't know what it's supposed to be like. They're unlikely to downgrade it, are they? So, but I don't know. I mean, with these sort of things, this is where you have to sort of take with a pinch of salt data mine stuff and think, well, we'll just wait for it to actually be in. Well, yeah, that's another thing, concept art stuff as well. But I think we're better off just waiting to see until it's actually properly in there. Is Shadow Priest going to be my alt in BFA? Not necessarily, no. I was just testing it. I've been testing quite a few. So far, I've tested Arms and Fury Warrior, Havoc Demon Hunter, Unholy Death Knight, but not Frost yet. Assassination and Outlaw Rogue. Obviously Ret Paladin, quite a lot. Windwalker Monk. What else? Shadow Priest. Beastmaster and Marksman Hunter. So I've still got plenty of other things to test out. Is the Ret Paladin nerfed in BFA? How can it be nerfed in BFA? Because whether you're nerfed or buffed depends on how other classes are, relatively speaking. I would say it's better. But, again, there's supposed to be a build going out this week. I don't think it's going to go... I hope it doesn't go out today, actually. But the last I heard, they did have some interesting thoughts about... utility. But we will just have to see what they end up going with. Yes, choosing a character this early is not feasible because so many things can change. Yeah, well, to be fair, I chose to do a Havoc Demon Hunter out because before the alpha even launched, just because I thought it's the new class, everyone will want to play it, so I'll get my name on the list early. So I had no idea how it was going to be, other than it was going to look cool, which it did. But there you go. So then I got stuck with it. Ah, well, there's a lot of old content in BFA that's not really working properly. Like, we're still on the Broken Isles, as far as I can tell. On the world map, they still haven't got Zandalar and Kulturas. Is it really testing when there's no gear and only crap stats? Yes, because you're testing the baseline abilities and how well they work with each other. Granted, with the Azerite armor, that's going to add another dynamic to the classes, but that hopefully should just be a case of tuning. Tuning is the last thing to be done. They don't even tune before raid testing. Raid testing is always, for those who get to do it, real fun. Because I remember in WoD, which is the last expansion where I did any raid testing, the first week of raid testing, I mean, I did it as a Ret Paladin, but in actual fact, I'd have done more damage as a Protection Paladin. Prot Paladins were doing way, without even tanking, way more damage. So tuning will be a complete shambles when the raid testing happens. Tuning is like the last thing to be done. Did I see the Demon Hunter who soloed the Mythic plus 15? Yes, I did. I mean, I didn't watch the video, but I noted the thing on MMO Champion. If I'm thinking of a healer alt and doing dungeons, can't go wrong with... I don't like Resto Druids. I've never got on with Resto Druids. Never. I quite like Resto Shaman. I mean, I sort of quite liked Mistweaver in Mop. But I didn't really play it much in WoD, and I've not played it at all in Legion. Never mind that. It's nothing too personal about Druids. It's not that it's a bad class. I just don't get on with them. I can't be doing with them. But I haven't actually healed a raid for years. So, but I'm not about to practice now in the alpha because I'm not using standard UI to heal with. I refuse. So I shall wait until they allow add-ons to work, which will probably be quite late on. And then I will try out a few healing options. I mean, I was going to get a bit of practice on Resto Shaman because I leveled one up. And then we were doing our alt raids in Antorus. And then, because one week we just didn't have enough healers, so I thought, oh, I geared the Resto Shaman up and went to heal with it. A load of rubbish, obviously, the first week. But then all of a sudden we had loads of healers there that week. What we lacked was a Warlock, so the next week I went on a Warlock. Then all of a sudden we had loads of Warlocks. So whatever I geared up and took, we had loads of. No, I don't really follow the Mythic Plus Invitational. There's certain things, like sports in general. Some of them are fun to play and not to watch, and some vice versa. I think World of Warcraft, in all of its guises, is not that fun to watch other people doing it. I mean, I can understand people watching it while you stream, because you can at least have a chat about it with someone. But, you know, just watching someone doing it is a bit... it's like, I could just do it myself. It would be more fun for me to go and do a Mythic Plus myself. But that's me personally. I mean, when I see World of Warcraft streaming it, they always get quite a lot of viewers. It's usually over 10,000 viewers. So there must be plenty of people who do find it interesting. Ah, well, in terms of strategies, Method have just done a series of Mythic Plus guides anyway that they've been putting on Wowhead. So, I mean, ironically, I do like watching StarCraft. Like at BlizzCon, I'll usually watch some of the StarCraft. Even though I don't play StarCraft, I have no idea. Well, I've got a vague idea because it's basically, you know, an RTS. But for some reason, that's quite enjoyable to watch, even though I don't play it. Heroes of the Storm is alright to watch, actually. I'm alright watching Heroes of the Storm as well. But I don't particularly like playing either of those games. Whereas, like, when I was younger, the games I used to like playing, I used to like doing judo and badminton. But I don't like watching either of them. They're not fun to watch, or for me anyway. But they were my favourite sports to play. Well, what have I done? Do I feel the World Cup is going to be the death of most raiding guilds? No. I've never noticed the World Cup having a significant effect on raiding guilds. Even though, given that, you know, where it is this time, I think there's going to be more combat in that than there is in the game. Do I still do any of the holidays in WoW? No. I don't do anything in WoW apart from raid. And occasionally the odd Mythic Plus. Well, if you can do dungeons without a healer, then either there needs to be more damage being done or they need to nerf tanks again. I say again, they were supposed to have nerfed tank survivability in Legion but they still seem fairly beefy. I mean, I quite like the idea of tanks having to look after their own health. It's a lot better than in the days of TBC or vanilla, where if they died, oh, it's healer's fault. And if they lost aggro, it's DPS fault. It was never their fault. Whereas now they've got a bit more responsibility. It is the most important event on the planet, but in the Venn diagram of, you know, people that are going to watch the World Cup football and people who play WoW, there's not a lot of overlap. Also, of course, like the majority of the people that will watch it will be in Europe. And I just think time-wise it'll probably be okay as well. Because most of the matches should just miss the normal raid times. I don't think Blizzard wants to kill Mythic Raiders in BFA. That makes no sense at all. It's their premier content. They put more effort. If you think about the amount of resources per player that it benefits, they spend far more effort on Mythic raid content than anything else. And they're more than delighted to do that. You know, it's something they talk about. They spend a lot of time. You look at the Q&As. They spend a lot of time answering questions that are only of interest to Mythic Raiders. You know, so for all this talk about small proportion. By the way, small proportion doesn't mean tiny proportion. People just think it means, oh, it's like 1% of the player base. No, it's not. It's a much bigger proportion than that. It's a minority, but it's not a tiny minority. But, so no, that makes no sense at all. And they also it's like judging it like not all players are equal even, because a lot of Mythic Raiders will spend more money on the game than a lot of more casual players. Because some of the more casual players are the ones who don't even subscribe every month. Mythic Raiders, at the very least, will subscribe every month. They will also help drive the WoW token economy, whether it's by farming a load of gold to buy the tokens, which is encouraging people like me to physically pay for the tokens and put them on the auction house. You know, things like that. So in terms of the revenue they generate, it's an even larger proportion than just the strict number of players. Do I think they'll ever add another tier to raiding? Legend of Mythic Plus. Good God, is it not enough with 4? I think 4's too many. Although, unlike a lot of people, I don't think the one that should make way is LFR. But yeah, no, you can't add a 5th, surely to God. It's only a step from there before you are doing Mythic Plus raids. The Master Loot change doesn't, well, it depends how they implement it. It doesn't actually screw over Mythic Raiders. In some ways it helps. It's just the specific implementation could also be very annoying. But it certainly doesn't harm Mythic Raiders. Yeah, but Mythic Raiders, well, you say 5 to 10% of the player base. It's actually it's more than that. But it's the percentage in terms of revenue made is even greater. You know, I can't emphasize just how much Mythic Raiding has expanded during Legion. And I know I say that it's more difficult to keep mythic raiding guilds together in Legion than it ever has been, and to maintain them. But the sheer number of mythic raiders has increased. Ironically, I think that's what's caused it to be so difficult to maintain them. Because a lot of the players you would ordinarily have attracted who would have been stuck in heroic guilds, because more of those guilds have been able to do some bosses on Mythic, has kept some of those players in those guilds. So they've not been available for moving further forwards. You'd like to see something more varied than tyrannical or fortified. Well, you may get your wish, because I believe that there is going to be a change in the way affixes are done. And I don't just mean new affixes. I think they are actually changing some things. But I can't remember what now. I've forgotten. But it does involve tyrannical and fortified. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they also said they're going to introduce some affixes that are beneficial. So they're not always penalties. The casual environment is way too large to support that Mythic Raiders keep it going. What do you mean by that, Blaze? I did get the Salute to StarCraft achievement. I don't know why I did. All that happened was at the end of the raid, this here raid here in the background, someone got out a pet, so we all just saluted it. I wasn't going to chase it or anything. I didn't really care about it, but it was there, so I got it. I don't know what the purpose of it was. I know there's been some sort of anniversary or something. Aren't they the people most affected? I don't know what we're on about here. I seem to have lost the thread. Build your own keystone. I'm not sure I'm keen on that. I don't have time for television. I don't watch television. Mythic Raiders are the only people affected by the Master Loot change. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Depends how it's implemented. As I say. Because all the... I mean, they didn't give the details. They never do this. The problem is, because no one's actually interviewed them on it, and I have no confidence, although I have some hope, but I have no confidence that when MMO Champion or whoever the hell... Because isn't PAX soon? Am I right or am I wrong? When is that? People are increasingly talking about PAX, so I'm guessing it's soonish, but I don't know. But either way, when they're interviewed on it, I have no confidence that the people are going to ask the right questions to pin down a definitive answer on exactly how it's going to work. But it is possible. I have some hope that they will do that. And then we will know more. Like, if all they want to do is stop split raiding, and they said that's their prime aim, then people have already said there's several ways you can do that. You could have it so that Master Loot doesn't work in normal and heroic, which of course will affect normal and heroic raiders as well. But it also removes the reason for split raiding for the lower guilds. And people keep making this thing out that, oh, yeah, but the top guilds have already worked out a way to split raid. They were split raiding anyway before it ever became an issue. They've been doing it for 10 years. No one cares about that. Blizzard don't care about that. What they apparently care about, although it was the first I heard of it when we talked about it in that Q&A. Actually, no, that's not true. They did talk about the fact they weren't keen on it earlier on. But that there was nothing they could do about it. Was the fact that you've got hundreds of guilds doing it now. You know, there's a lot of guilds, like mythic raiding guilds, from everything going down to several hundred. Not all guilds. There are some guilds that finish quite high that don't do it. But there's, you know, there are a lot of guilds that do some sort of split run. at least in the first couple of weeks. As a percentage, this is to how much preordained work have you achieved? I've not done too badly. In terms of extra videos, not at the moment, because I've been working on other things. Like the Twitch page, I've put some better looking panels. Obviously, they're just placeholders at the moment. I'll keep buggering about with them. I've been trying out some intros and new trailer stuff for the channel. And I am expecting a significant build this week. I just don't know when it is. So that will also occupy me. Well, I mean, the thing is, you know, when you talk about normal guilds using EPGP and stuff like that, I mean, I don't know how even heroic guilds survive, I have to confess. But, I mean, a lot of these people will, of course, try to ape what they think are the ways that more progressed guilds work. I'll be able to return to work happy with... Argus was completely irrelevant. That had nothing to do with Easter, that's the thing. I will only return to work happy if I achieve my Easter objectives, which was nothing to do with killing Argus. Argus should have been dead before we even finished. My thoughts for the day. Yes, well, I shall start those as well again soon. Potentially today. If I'm not too tired at the end of this, I might do one. I've got my memory stick with the ones, the planned ones downstairs, actually. How do I feel about player professions having more of an impact in PvE? I have split opinions on it. On the one hand, it's nice. I do have specific views on what would make it nicer. On the other hand, like, my character's been a blacksmith and an enchanter since TBC. So I would consider it a bit of an arsehole if the professions were such that I was encouraged to take two different professions, because I wouldn't be inclined to do that. So, yeah. Dictionary Corner is just one of those things every time someone says something that shows an ignorance of culture. So what you're trying to say is mythic group versus casual group in comparison to size is different. I didn't say mythic raiders were keeping everything going. What I'm saying is people underestimate the effect of mythic raiders on the game, because the mythic raiders spend money out of proportion to their numbers, and their numbers are larger than some people give it credit for as well. It is way more than 10%. There are more than 10% of the player base that have Antorus mythic achievements. Now, a lot of those people, of course, will only get a few mythic bosses down. They're not going to get cutting edge. But that's still mythic raiding. And the other thing is that no content required for casual players need have any effect. Like, you know, there's no which do you favour. There's no conflict of interest between bringing out content for casual players and bringing out content for mythic raiders. There doesn't need to be a choose which population you wish to favour. If mythic raiders didn't exist, the game would be very, very different to what it is now. it'd be hard to imagine what the progression system would be like, other than it might end up being a bit like Star Wars: The Old Republic, which I note actually after apparently some rumours of it ending. Actually, the opposite's happened. I saw some mention of the fact there's going to be a new expansion for that. The way I would like to see professions used is for potentially gear, but at the same time that would then encourage people to have certain professions. So it might not be that great an idea after all. A mythic raider is anyone who has killed mythic bosses. There is no value in looking down your nose at anyone just because they haven't killed as many mythic bosses as you think they should to be called a mythic raider. Because where do you draw the line? Everyone is a peasant compared to Method. Maybe Exorcists are just close to the peasant border at the moment. So if you've killed a mythic boss, I mean, you can start to come up with all sorts of definitions like, well, you should probably have progressed on it rather than, you know, be brought in as a trial and essentially boosted, but you've never actually progressed on a mythic boss. But then you're getting into, like, you know, all sorts of weird definitions. You might as well just say, if you've killed a mythic boss and you didn't pay for it, then then you're a mythic raider. Way less guilds have killed Mythic Argus than TOS Mythic. Well, that's because the TOS Mythic's been out longer. Let's look at the actual numbers on this. There's not actually that many more. There's not many more have done Mythic kil'jaeden compared to Mythic Argus, and Mythic kil'jaeden has been available for a lot longer. Emerald Nightmare Mythic was certainly not that. No, Cenarius was, I suppose, Il'gynoth in terms of coordination, and then Cenarius in terms of just straight up fairly brutal fight. But then, you know, the whole package was not that tough. But of course they made up for it then, didn't they, with Mythic Helya? In fact, even Mythic Odin was probably a step up from, I guess, all of the Mythic bosses in Emerald Nightmare. Now, you know, Mythic Rage, if you kill Mythic bosses, getting 11 out of 11 makes you, or before a certain time, makes you a cutting edge raider. That's a different thing. Can't come up with your own definitions. Hi, Ishva. Apart from anything else, before I killed Argus, I wasn't even doing heroic, so I couldn't have been a heroic raider either. Il'gynoth just required coordination. Even when you outgeared it and were just going back there just for fun, you could still wipe on it if people just thought, oh, good, time to pass. But that's just shades of grey. It's like, you know, anything. You can call yourself a footballer. You don't have to be in the Premier League. If you're doing the content, then that's what you are. Someone who completes it within a certain time frame is a cutting edge raid. That's a different thing. And someone who completes it really quickly can then say that they're a pre-nerf cutting edge raider if they want to further distinguish themselves. And of course in BFA they'll be able to dangle a top 100 in the world for their faction achievement as well. Occasionally this is true that the first mythic bosses are easier than the last heroic boss. It's not always the case. I mean, heroic Argus was pretty straightforward. Embarrassingly so, I would say. Yeah, but that's the difficulty of mythic raiding. That yes, indeed, the people who can clear the whole thing, even with split runs potentially, in the first week on heroic, may not get cutting edge. Oh, what have I done with it? The first boss, it may not have that many complex mechanics, but you usually still need coordination. Tends to be the big thing. I mean, what can still make it harder than the last heroic boss is the need to actually do the mechanics. Whereas, you know, I sometimes say your best heroic raider can be your worst mythic raider. Because sometimes you'll have, when you're doing your heroic, you'll have someone who does absolutely shitloads of damage, but they do it by ignoring mechanics because you sort of get away with it or other people cover for you. And then, you know, you could do that on Garothi Worldbreaker and you don't soak and then you just wipe half the raid and the boss doesn't die. Coven was a bit of an arse. But Agrimar, you could do it safely, and it was an easy fight. And Argus was just straightforward. ANR, of course, on Mythic was a bit too trivial. As it often is when you do have, as Warcraft logs described, a glorified trash fight. Ah, you say that. Mythic Coven is not. It depends on your roster, doesn't it? Try doing it without any multi-dotters and then with loads of melee. Then try telling me it's easy. It's a horrendous boss. Hateful. What the hell? I mean, the thing is, you're supposed to have personal responsibility in Mythic Raiding anyway. It might have been a little bit too extreme in Tomb of Sargeras. But nonetheless, I mean, there's a difference between a mechanic there where if you die to it, you basically scupper the whole raid, and a mechanic that's actually very tough and you can easily die to it if you lose focus. A lot of the mechanics that were killing people were the ones that wouldn't kill you if you paid attention, though. So it really just was people not paying attention in most cases. I mean, the trouble we had, for example, on Maiden, which should have been such an easy... I mean, such an easy boss. And yet the amount of time it took us to do it. Because people would find new and exciting ways to run into the wrong orb. Or to not jump in the hole on time. Or at all. But this tier certainly was more straightforward than Tomb. Except, I mean, it's a bit weird. Like, I thought the first three bosses were hard in Antorus were harder than the first 3 bosses in Tomb of Sargeras, because they were just pushovers, but on balance. Well, that's handy, Kasasha, because people kept doing Emerald Nightmare forever after for the trinkets that dropped off Ursoc. What I particularly hated in it was the trash between the first boss and then the little carousel of bosses after it. That seemed unnecessarily lengthy and unpleasant. I always find it a bit awkward when you've got trash that sort of requires that everyone's there when you know full well people are hopping about trying to decide what loot they want to need on and so on. Hypes for BFA. At the moment, we don't know enough about the mechanics of BFA. We don't know enough about Azerite armor. We don't know enough about islands and warfronts and what we're going to get from them. We don't even know enough about Mythic Plus and what we're going to get from that. Portal Keeper. What's wrong with Portal Keeper? If you're downstairs, stun the ads. If you're not downstairs, kill the boss. Do I prefer set route? No, it's always better to... Well, you don't have to have a complete choice of order, but it's always nice to have an order at certain points because it allows you to choose a route based on your roster. For example, if you had a set route, you might have a situation where, let's say, the 3rd boss in the raid needs a 5th healer, just for the sake of argument, and you don't have one. Well, then you're going to slow yourself down. But let's say you had a choice of one that maybe benefited from having a couple of rogues, and you had a couple of rogues, then you could do that one first, and maybe you've got your extra healer for when you come to the other one. So it punishes guilds less for having incomplete rosters if you allow a little bit of choice. No big baddie to get excited about. What are you on about? There's Queen Ashara. There's potentially some Nzothi related stuff. There could easily be very major lore characters to fight. It's just that we don't really know about them yet. We sort of know Queen Ashara is going to be in. But they just haven't hyped the known people there. Not that I'm a big fan of that. I'm not really a fan of the known lore characters that we're going off to fight. We've had enough of that. But people do seem to like it. Dreadlord Jaina, exactly. Queen Ashara may well escape. I'm still a little concerned about all those tentacles. I don't really want a fight that's going to be water-based. I mean, it's not guaranteed to be that. I mean, it might be that she's in water and you're on platforms and she just keeps jumping into the water and back out again. It's just that, you know, I'm just a bit apprehensive about what it's going to be like. I don't know about Yogg-Saron and Cthulhu now. Bear in mind, I haven't read Warcraft Chronicles 3 because they're not sending it to me. So I don't know if it's talked about in there. I mean, the official law was that you can't... Well, you can kill old gods, but we haven't. Yasharaj is the only one that has ever been killed, and it nearly did for Azeroth. So the decision was made to imprison them rather than kill them, because killing them is bad. Now it might be, to be fair, that killing them isn't bad, just ripping them out of Azeroth is bad. Maybe you can kill them so that they shrivel up and die without causing a whacking great wound in Azeroth. However, I find it strange that the official law was, no, of course we didn't kill Cthulhu. All we did was hit his little toenail because it was a tiny little thing in a room, whereas Cthulhu is actually as big as a city. And the same sort of thing with Yogg-Saron. To now, there seems to be some doubt over the matter. So I don't know anymore. Is it possible we'll get raids in BFA on the Siege of Undercity and Stormwind? No. Because I don't know whether this is a spoiler or not. I think it's a spoiler, so I'm not going to say. Vashir, yeah, I don't want anything like Vashir ever again. Well, I mean, that was the law originally. As I say, they could change that, because it could just be that was established without even retconning it. Because, like I say, the particular method of killing them that Amonful chose was to rip the bugger out. Now, you can imagine, a bit like if you've got a parasite on your skin, if you just rip it off, it can cause some damage to you. That can be bad. But if you've got a parasite on you and you, say, inject it with something that will kill the parasite but not you, and it just sort of shrivels up and falls off you, maybe that would work. So maybe the equivalent thing happening to an old god. So, it's not that it's definitely impossible to kill them without harming Azeroth. Just that particular method, because Amonful only tried one method, to be fair. It wasn't exactly a scientific, investigation. So I don't know. All I do know is I would be very surprised if we have killed Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron, because it was all on a very small scale. What do I expect will be the new zones in the patches in BFA? Just, if there's going to be new zones at all, just islands. I mean, they're supposed to be... Zandalar, at least, is supposed to be in the South Seas. Kulturas, I mean, I don't know. I think that's supposed to be in the South Seas now as well, even though it's not where it used to be. So I would just say they'll make up names for other islands there. Yes, Mahal, that is pre-patch content. We had, yes, the blacksmiths can craft an anchor. I haven't seen an equivalent thing to be crafted in BFA Alpha. However, there is a vendor that I think is described as an anchor vendor or something. Can't remember. Yes. No, I don't think the pre-patch will have anything to do. We go to Zandalar and Kulturas when the expansion comes out. Yeah, but that portal to Lordaeron, I don't know what that's about. You've got to bear in mind that there's only one portal in the Alliance hub, which is Stormwind. So, how much is placeholder or not, I don't know. Yes, Kulturas should be in N'Zoth territory. So we should have his sort of effects there. No, I think it's N'Zoth. In reference to it, all sort of Kraken type things. the equivalent in... well, I mean, there is a Kraken in WoW, because there was one in Cataclysm that knackered our boat, wasn't there? But given that there's also cultists in that zone, cultists tend to be old gods worshippers. I just think that's going to be a reference to that. Well, I don't know, because there's more content for the Alliance than the Horde in the Alpha, but that's not necessarily a good thing. That could just be a case of it being... there we go. That could just be a case of it being that it doesn't have as many shiny things in it. What have I done? Because the third Horde zone isn't available yet. I assume it's going to be in the next build. Also, you've been able to go to do the Alliance level cap quest zones for a couple of weeks now, 2 or 3 weeks. But it's still not... Well, I can't see where it's available for Horde. Well, of course it's more buggy. But there's plenty of bugs on the Horde side as well. What the hell? I won't go betting money. It is possible, but I just hope it's unlikely that there would be an underwater zone. Favourite quest in Alpha so far? I think probably the bees one. I like the bees in Storm Song Valley. But that's mostly because I like the bees. But anyway, we seem to have come to the end of this one. There'll be, as I say, a new build at some point. I'm hoping it's not going to be tonight, because there were a few things still being discussed about Ret Paladins, which would mean that if the build did go out tonight, there wouldn't have been time to put them in. So I'm hoping it's actually going to come out tomorrow or Thursday. But we shall see. At least I'll be able to do something about it as soon as I wake up, if that is going to be the case. So thanks for coming on, everyone. I'll be back on tomorrow, hopefully with some raiding. Actually starting from Garothi Worldbreaker. I haven't been on that boss for I don't know how long. So yes, hopefully there'll be some actual raiding going on. And then we'll see, see when the build comes out. I am tired. How long I've been up now? Do you know, I've forgotten already. About... well, going on for 35 hours-ish. But anyway, thanks very much. Good night, everyone. I'll see you later.